The package on my doorstep was addressed to my daughter, and I opened it anyway because I am her mother and she has things shipped to my house all the time. I expected something ordinary. A return, a pair of shoes. Instead, I unfolded a handwritten note that sat on top of a stack of old family photographs, and the note was signed in a handwriting I had not seen in 25 years, and it said, "Thank you for coming to see me on Sunday, sweetheart. Love, Grandpa Gerry." I stood in my own kitchen and read that one line maybe 10 times. Grandpa Gerry, my father, the man I had cut out of my life a quarter of a century ago, the man my children had been raised understanding was simply not a part of our family. My daughter Allie had been to see him on Sunday, and the warmth in that note, the ease of it, the word sweetheart, the casual, "Thank you for coming," that was not the note of a man who had been visited once. That was the note of a grandfather. An ordinary, established, beloved grandfather. My daughter had one, and I was the last person in my family to find out. My name is Cheryl Donovan. I am 56 years old, and I have clean teeth for a living in Hartford, Connecticut for almost 30 years. I am going to tell you why I refused to see my father for 25 years. And the reason was real, and I need you to hear that the reason was real. But first, I'm going to tell you what I did in the weeks after that package arrived. Because the package did not just reveal my daughter's secret, it pulled the floor out from under the most settled decision of my entire adult life. Here's the thing I need you to understand before anything else, because the whole story depends on it. When I cut my father out, I was not being dramatic, and I was not being cruel. I was protecting myself, and later, I believed I was protecting my children. My father, Gerald Donovan, was not a good father to me. I am going to be careful with how I say this, because the details belong to me and to a little girl I used to be. But I will tell you the shape of it. My father drank, through all the years of my childhood, and when he drank, he vanished. Not from the house, but from us, into somewhere behind his own eyes where his children could not reach him. He missed the things that mattered. He was sharp when he should have been soft. He was, for the whole of my growing up, a man I loved and a man I could not count on. And those two facts living in the same person is one of the most confusing and corrosive things a child can be handed. I spent my 20s trying, the way you do, trying to build something with him as an adult, trying to give it one more chance, and then one more. And 25 years ago, when my own daughter Allie was barely school age, there was a final attempt. And it failed the way the others had failed, and he let me down in a way I will not detail, except to say that it landed on my children, not just on me. And I made a decision, clear-eyed, at a kitchen table much like the one I was now standing at. I decided I was done. I decided my father had used up every chance a person gets, and that I would not keep walking my kids up to a door that never opened. I cut him off. Cleanly. And I did not look back. And I told myself, for 25 years, that not looking back was strength. I want to tell you what those 25 years actually looked like, because "I cut him off" is 3 words, and it sounds simple, and it was not simple. It was 1,000 small daily acts. It was not sending a birthday card. It was steering conversations away from him at family gatherings. It was the careful, edited way I answered when Allie, as a little girl, asked why other kids had 2 grandpas and she had one. I never said cruel things about my father to my children. I want that on the record because it matters later. I did not poison them against him. I did something quieter and, I have come to think, almost as heavy. I simply made him not exist. I closed the subject so gently and so completely that my children learned, without a single harsh word ever being spoken, that there was a man we did not discuss, a door we did not knock on, a name that made their mother's face go still. They learned it the way children learn the weather, and I called all of that protecting them. For 25 years, I genuinely believed that was the whole of what it was. So you can imagine what it did to me, holding that note. But I want to tell you the harder thing, the thing it took me weeks to be honest about, because my first reaction was rage at my daughter, and my first reaction turned out to be the least true thing I felt. I did not call Allie that night. I sat with the package instead, and I went through all of it. The photographs were of my childhood. My father had kept them. Pictures of me as a girl. Pictures of my own mother, who has been gone 15 years. Pictures of grandparents I barely remembered. And the more I looked, the more the truth of the situation assembled itself. And it was not the truth of a single Sunday visit. There were references in that note to things only someone close would know. He mentioned Allie's job. He mentioned, by name, the little dog Allie had adopted the year before. He asked her to tell the kids, my grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, that he had liked the drawings. The drawings! My grandchildren had sent my father drawings. I sat there and did the arithmetic, and the arithmetic was brutal. My daughter Allie is 30 years old. This was not a recent betrayal. Allie had built a relationship with my father, a real one, a deep one with great-grandchildren and dogs and ordinary Sundays in it, and she had built it, by the look of things, over a span of years. 10 years, maybe more. For perhaps a decade, my daughter had a grandfather, and my grandchildren had a great-grandfather, and an entire wing of my family had been quietly, lovingly inhabited, and I had been kept out of the room. By my own child. On purpose. And as I sat there, the photographs did a second thing to me, a thing I had not braced for. Because I started actually looking at them, not at the fact of them, but at the pictures themselves. There was one of me at maybe 7 years old, gap-toothed, squinting into the sun, and my father had kept it for 50 years. There was one of my mother, young and laughing, that I had never seen in my life. There was one of my own grandmother standing in a vegetable garden I had no memory of. My father had carried these through 5 decades, through the drinking and the sobering up and the long silence I had imposed, and he had kept them safe. And now, old and running out of time, he was not throwing them away, and he was not clinging to them. He was sending them down the line. To Allie. To the great-grandchildren. He was making sure the family pictures reached the family, even the parts of the family that would not speak to him. I sat in my kitchen, holding the evidence of my father's quiet, patient love for a lineage that had cut him loose, and I did not know what to do with my own face. I barely slept that night, and in the not sleeping, a strange grief surfaced that had nothing to do with Allie at all, because somewhere under the anger at being kept in the dark was a much older, much quieter ache, and it took me until almost dawn to name it. My daughter had a grandfather. My grandchildren had a great-grandfather. There was a version of my father, patient, sober, gentle, the kind that keeps every drawing a child sends him, that actually existed, walking around an hour from my house, and I had never met that man. The drinking had taken my father from me when I was small, and my own locked door had kept him from me ever since, and the result was that the good version of Gerald Donovan, the one that finally arrived, had arrived too late for his own daughter and just in time for everyone after her. That is a specific kind of sorrow, and I had not expected to be ambushed by it at 4 a.m, and I lay there and let it move through me before I could even begin to think about what to do. When I finally did call Allie, I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say to her. I had the whole speech. I was not prepared at all for what she said back. Allie came over the next evening. I had the package on the table between us, the note facing up, and I asked her to explain it, and my voice was not kind. She did not crumble, and she did not deny, and she did not, after the first minute, even apologize. My daughter looked at that note, and then she looked at me, and what was on her face was not the face of a child caught doing wrong. It was the face of a grown woman who had been waiting, maybe for years, to finally have this conversation in the daylight. She said, "Mom, I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not going to say I'm sorry I know him, because I'm not. I found Grandpa Gerry about 11 years ago. I was 19. I looked him up myself, and I went to see him myself, and I kept going. And yes, I hid it from you for 11 years, and that part, the hiding, that part I am sorry for, because it was exhausting and it was wrong and I hated it, but I need you to hear the rest." And then she said the thing that I have not stopped turning over since. She said, "You cut him out of your life. That was yours to do, Mom. He hurt you and you had every right, and I have never once doubted you about that. But when you cut him out of your life, you cut him out of mine too. You decided, when I was 5 years old, that I would not have a grandfather. You made that decision for me, and I lived with it, your decision, until I was 19. And then I was an adult, and I decided I got to make my own. I asked her, and my voice cracked when I asked it, why she had never come to me. Why, in 11 years, she had not once sat me down and told me. And Allie's eyes filled, and she said the part that I think hurt her the most to say. She said, "Because I watched your face, Mom, my whole life. Every single time anything got near the subject of your father, I watched your face close like a door. And I was a kid, and then I was a teenager, and the message I got, you never said it, but I got it, was that this was the one thing that could really hurt you, the one thing that was not allowed. So when I found him, I had a choice. I could tell you, and watch it land on you like a wound, and probably be forbidden from seeing him, or I could just carry it, quietly. Keep him in one part of my life, and you in the other, and never let the two touch. I chose to carry it. For 11 years. And I'm not telling you that to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you so you understand it was never that I didn't trust you. It's that I was trying, the whole time, not to hurt you. I started to argue. I started to say that I had protected her, that she did not know what he was, that she had not been there. And Allie stopped me, gently, and she said the second thing, and the second thing was worse because it was kinder. She said, "Mom, I believe you. Every word. The man who raised you. I believe he was exactly who you say he was. But that man is not the man I met. I met an 80-year-old. I met someone quiet and sober. He has been sober a long time now, Mom, longer than I've been alive, and someone who is sorry in a way that doesn't ask for anything. He has never once asked me to fix this. He has never told me to talk to you, or to bring you, or to carry a message. He knows what he did. He knows he doesn't get to undo it. He was glad to know me. That's all. He was glad a piece of his family still came to the door." And then Allie said, very quietly, "He's not the father you had. He couldn't be. But he got to be a decent grandfather, and I didn't want to throw that away just because the two of you broke something before I was even born." And then my daughter said one more thing before she went home, and it is the sentence that actually moved me, in the end, more than any of the others. She said, "Mom, I'm not asking you to forgive him. I would never ask you that. It's not mine to ask, and honestly, I don't even know if you should. I'm just asking you to stop deciding it for the rest of us. Let me have my grandfather. Let my kids have him for whatever time is left. You don't have to come. You don't have to forgive anything. Just unlock the door, and then you can stand wherever you want in relation to it. But stop being the lock." I did not have an answer for my daughter that night. I sent her home, and I sat up until 2 in the morning, and somewhere in those dark hours, the anger I had walked in with quietly cracked open, and what was underneath it was not what I expected. Here is what I had to face, alone, at my kitchen table. I had been so certain for 25 years that cutting my father off was a single, clean act of self-protection. And the self-protection part was true. I do not take it back. No one, and I mean this, I want anyone listening who carries a parent like mine to hear it. No one is obligated to keep a person in their life who has done them harm, no matter whose blood it is. My leaving was mine, and it was right, and I would do it again. But it had never once occurred to me, in 25 years, that my decision had a second half. When I closed that door, I did not just close it for me. I closed it for Allie. I closed it for her brother. I closed it, eventually, for grandchildren who had not even been born yet. I had taken a wound that belonged to me, my father's failures, done to me in my childhood, and I had quietly handed it down, like a piece of furniture, to children who had never been in the room when the wound was made. I had made my 5-year-old an heir to my estrangement, and I had never thought to ask whether that was mine to bequeath. And the hardest part, the part that kept me up, was this. Allie had not actually rebelled against me. Allie had waited. She had carried my decision, obediently, for 14 years, until she was a grown woman, and then she had done the only thing a grown woman should be allowed to do. She had gone and looked for herself. She had not trusted my verdict blindly, and she had not defied it blindly either. She had gone and gathered her own evidence and reached her own finding. And the finding was that the old man at the end of that road was someone she was glad to know. Who was I, who is anyone, to tell a 30-year-old woman that she is not allowed to make that call? There was one more thing I had to sit with, and it was the most uncomfortable of all, and it was about the hiding. I had spent the first night furious that Allie had deceived me for 11 years, but sitting there in the dark, I made myself ask the honest question: why had she needed to? And the answer was not flattering to me. Allie had hidden it because I had built, without ever intending to, a household in which my father was the one unsurvivable subject, the one topic that could genuinely wound me, the one door that was not just closed, but electrified. My daughter had not lied to me because she was a liar. She had lied to me because I had made the truth too expensive for her to afford. She had spent 11 years choosing between hurting her mother and hiding from her mother, and that is a terrible choice to put on a child, and I had put it there, and I had not even known I was doing it. The secrecy I was so angry about was, in the end, a structure I had built myself. She had just been living inside it. So, a few weeks later, I did the thing I had sworn for 25 years I would never do. I told Allie I wanted to see him, and she did not cheer, and she did not cry. She just nodded, like she had been waiting a long time, and she said she would drive. My father lives in a small assisted living apartment about an hour from me. Allie drove. I did not say much in the car. I did not know what I was walking in to do. I want to be honest about that. I was not walking in to forgive him. I had not decided anything that large. I was walking in, I think, simply to replace a 25-year-old picture in my head with whatever was actually true now. And the man who opened the door was old. That was the first thing, and it should not have surprised me, and it did. The father in my memory was a large, sharp, frightening when he drank presence. The man at the door was small and slow, and his hands shook a little, and he looked at me. He knew me instantly, of course, and his face did something complicated and broke a little, and he did not move to embrace me because he seemed to understand he had not earned that, and he just said, "Cheryl." Just my name, like a word he had not been allowed to say out loud in a long time. We sat down, and my father did not perform. That is what I keep coming back to. He did not put on a show of remorse, and he did not minimize, and he did not once, ask me for anything. He said, and his voice was quiet and steady, "I was not the father you needed. I know that. I knew it then, and I was too far inside the bottle and inside myself to climb out and fix it, and by the time I climbed out, you were gone, and you had every reason to be gone. I am not going to sit here and ask you to give me something back. That is not what this is." He looked at his own shaking hands. He said, "I have been grateful for Allie. She has been a kindness I did not deserve. And if today is the only time I ever see you again, then today was still more than I had any right to. That's all. That's all I have to say to you." And then there was a long quiet, and I found that I had something to say after all, and it surprised me because I had walked in believing I would mostly listen. I told him the truth. I told him that I had been a little girl who needed a father and did not get one, and that no apology, however sincere, could be mailed back through 50 years to reach that child, and that I was not going to pretend otherwise to make the afternoon easier for either of us. And my father did not flinch from it. He nodded, slowly, and he said, "I know. I am not asking you to pretend. I would rather have the true version of you in this room than a kind lie." And something in me loosened, just slightly at that, because for the whole of my childhood, my father had been a man who could not bear to look directly at hard things, and here he was, 80 years old, sitting still and looking directly at the hardest thing he had ever made, and not looking away. It did not undo anything, but it was not nothing. It was, I realized, the first genuinely honest conversation my father and I had ever had, and we'd had to wait until he was 80 and I was 56 to have it. I want to tell you what I did not do, because it matters as much as what I did. I did not forgive my father that afternoon in any large cinematic way. I want to be honest about that, because I think the honest version is more useful than the tidy one. 25 years of silence, and the 15 years of childhood underneath it, do not dissolve in one visit, and I did not pretend they did. I did not tell him I loved him. I did not call him Dad. The little girl I had been was still in that room with me, and I was not going to betray her by performing a reconciliation she had not agreed to. But something did change, and it was real, and it was this. For 25 years, I had been the keeper of a locked door, and I had believed that holding it shut was the same thing as being safe. Sitting across from that small, sober, sorry old man, I understood that the lock had been doing two jobs, and only one of them was protecting me. The other job it had been doing was deciding, for everyone who came after me, that this man did not exist. And that second job was never mine to do. So I made a different decision than the one I made 25 years ago. I told my father that I was not able to give him a daughter back, that the bottle had spent that long ago, and it was gone, and I would not pretend. But I told him I would no longer be the wall between him and the rest of the family. Allie could see him in the open now. My grandchildren could know their great-grandfather, and I would come sometimes. Not often, not as his little girl, but as a grown woman who had decided, with her own eyes open, that an old man running out of years did not need to spend them being erased by me. That is not forgiveness. I want to be clear, it is something smaller and more honest than forgiveness. It is just the unlocking of a door I had no right to keep locked for other people. On the drive home, Allie asked me if I was all right, and I told her the truth, which was that I did not entirely know. And then I told her something else, something I had needed to say since the kitchen, and I am glad I did not wait. I told her that I was sorry. Not for cutting off my father. I was not sorry for that, and I told her so. But I was sorry that, in doing it, I had quietly made the decision for her too, and had kept making it, year after year, long past the point when it was mine to make. I told her she had been right to go looking. I told her she should never have had to do it in secret, in the dark, carrying it alone for 11 years, and that the secrecy had not been her failure, it had been mine. My daughter cried a little driving, and she said, "I just always wanted you to know him the way I got to know him." And I said, "I know, sweetheart. I think I needed to know him the way I needed to know him first, but I am glad. I am glad somebody in this family got the better version." And that was true. It cost me nothing to say, and it was completely true. A year has passed now. My father is still alive, still in the small apartment, slower every month. I have been to see him a handful of times. The visits are quiet, and a little awkward, and limited, and they are exactly as much as I can honestly give. And I have stopped feeling guilty that it is not more, because honest and small is worth more than generous and fake. We are not healed. We will not be healed. There is not enough time left for that, and some breaks simply do not get the years they would need. But we are no longer nothing. And no longer nothing, I have learned, is its own quiet kind of enough. I will tell you about one of those visits, because it taught me the last thing I needed to learn. I had brought him a photograph. One of the ones from the package, actually, the one of my mother laughing in a garden. And I asked him about it, about where it was taken, about the day. And my father told me. He remembered the day in detail, the year, the house, the argument they had had that morning, and made up by lunch. And for about 20 minutes, my father and I simply talked about my mother, two people who had both loved her, remembering her together. It was not a grand reconciliation. We did not weep or embrace. We just shared, for 20 minutes, a person we had both lost. And I understood, driving home, that I had been so braced for the locked door to either stay locked or fly open that I had never imagined the third thing, that it could simply stand ajar, and that a person could pass an ordinary, bearable, even gentle 20 minutes in the doorway, owing nothing, pretending nothing. That was available the whole time. I just could not see it from behind the lock. Allie and I are closer than we have ever been. The thing that was between us was never really my father. It was the 11 years of hiding, the weight she carried of loving someone in secret to keep the peace with me. That weight is gone now. She does not have to choose anymore. My grandchildren have a great-grandfather, openly, and they bring him drawings, and he keeps every one. And I have made my peace with the fact that this whole gift, my daughter's relationship with her grandfather, the great-grandchildren's, the soft, small ending my father is getting to have, none of it came from me. It came from a 19-year-old who quietly decided that her mother's verdict was her mother's, and that she was allowed her own. She was right. It cost me something to admit that. It was still true. I want to leave you with the two things this taught me, because I learned them late and at some expense. The first is about cutting people off, and I want to say it carefully because both halves matter. You are allowed to cut off a parent. If someone harmed you, you do not owe them your presence for the rest of your life, and no one, no relative, no tradition, no guilt, gets to override that. That part is yours, fully, and I will defend it. But here is the second half, the half I missed for 25 years. Your estrangement is yours. It is not an inheritance. When you cut someone off, be very careful about how much of that decision you are quietly making on behalf of your children, who were not there, who did not vote, and who will one day be adults with the right to assess that person for themselves. Protect your kids while they are young, absolutely. But understand the difference between protecting a child and sentencing an adult. The grudge can be yours for life if you need it to be. Just do not hand it to your children as though it were theirs to carry. The second thing is shorter, and it is this. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing, and you do not have to wait for the first in order to allow the second. For 25 years, I thought the only two options were a locked door or a full reconciliation, total exile or total forgiveness. There is a third thing, and it is where most honest families actually live. You can decline to forgive someone. You can decline to call them what they failed to be. You can keep the wound exactly as real as it is, and still unlock the door for the people who want to walk through it, and still let an old man see his great-grandchildren before the time runs out. You do not have to feel healed to stop standing guard. Put down the key. The door was never only yours. If this story landed for you, drop the word package in the comments below. I read them. It tells me which stories are worth telling next. Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one before I go. First, when you make a hard decision to remove someone from your life, separate, very deliberately, the part that is protecting you from the part that is deciding for others. The first part is your right, and you should hold it without guilt. The second part, the part that erases a person from your children's lives, from your grandchildren's, that one has a shelf life. It is appropriate while they are small and cannot judge for themselves. It expires when they become adults. After that, the relationship is theirs to weigh, not yours to forbid. Second, you are allowed to keep a door unlocked without walking through it yourself. If there is someone in your family in permanent exile, ask whether the exile is still doing the job you assigned it, or whether it has quietly become a wall that other people, the ones who love that person, the ones running out of time with them, keep bumping into in the dark. You can leave your own grievance fully intact and still stop being the lock. Unlocking the door is not the same as forgiving. It is just refusing to make your wound everyone else's prison. Don't pass down the locked door. I'll see you next time.